Greetings, programs, and welcome back to another episode of the Awesome Friday podcast. I am your host. My name is Matthew, and joining me today is Simon, which I'm not even going to dress it up. It's just the normal thing we do. He's the co-host, so say hi, Simon.
Yeah, just for a nice surprise, it's me again after all these years. Who'd have thought? I'm fine. I'm a little tired. We made the decision to stay up till 2 a.m. to watch Ocean's 13 last night. I love that film. I really, really love that film, and I love Steven Soderbergh. And the end of that film makes me really, really happy, and that's why we stayed up to 2 a.m. to watch it.
Did you watch Ocean's 11 and 12 first, or did you just watch the Victory Lap one?
We just turned on cable, and it was like a little way through 13, and we both love that movie, so then we just watched it to the end. With all the commercial breaks, extending our bedtime by another hour. But we've watched all of the Ocean's movies multiple times with the kids. My kids love the Ocean's movies. It's some of their favorite films. They are absolutely, even 12 they like, but
Well, it's because 12 is great.
12 is great? No.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
12's not great, Matt. The one where they go to Italy is great.
The one where they completely subvert all the audience's expectations from the get-go? Yeah, it's great. The one that's literally...
Don't pull out the film critic big words on me.
The one that's literally a sequel about how difficult it is to make a sequel. So, like, how difficult it is to recapture the magic of a great performance. Like that.
Wow.
It's a great film.
Wow.
It's a lot more than 11 or 13, but it is still a great film.
You just let me know when you're finished, and I'll carry on. 13 is a far more successful heist movie, but it is an absolute mirror image of 11. I grant you that. There's no subversion there at all. But
no, it's a victory lap.
It also doesn't have Julia Roberts pretending to be Julia Roberts, and I'm conflicted how I feel about that. But it does have the hotel. The guy deciding whether Al Pacino is going to get his stars, just go through the worst night of his life, and then at the end he wins $11 million in the slot machine. And it makes me really happy. And Soderbergh's just brilliant. I just love what he does with framing and shots and editing and line delivery, and it's just great. What a great series of films. And even Ocean's 8, which is not a Soderbergh directed movie, although it's his director of photography or something, isn't it? It's one of his guys. It's
a great film. I really enjoy Ocean's 8.
Yeah,
I really enjoy Ocean's 8, and I love that. Sandra Bullock and Cate Blanchett have the same sort of dynamic as Clooney and Pitt do, and I would say that I wish I could pull off any single one of the outfits that Cate Blanchett wears in that movie.
Oh my god. Yeah, did they win an Oscar for costume? I mean, they should have.
They should have. I don't think they did, but they should have.
They're really, really great films. I haven't seen the Brat Pack original Ocean's 11. Have you? Of course you have.
I've seen it a long time ago, and my memory of it is that it's not as good. In that, my memory of the original is kind of like you sit down, you turn it on, you go, "Wow, look at all these amazing, famous." Like it just like it very much felt like, and maybe I'm wrong. It's been a long time, but my memory is that I found it quite kind of boring, and like a film made specifically to have those people in it. You know what I mean? Like so.
Yeah.
And so like I think it was ripe for a remake when they remade it, and I think the new ones are better. But to be fair though, I have not seen the original since I was in my early 20s, maybe. So my memory is probably pretty colored at this point.
You'll probably buy it on like limited edition Blu-ray tin from Shout Factory or something. That'll be your next Criterion import. I haven't seen this. I'll buy it.
I mean, honestly, like I'm far more likely to buy like a box set of the new ones.
I would.
But I am pretty upset that we haven't had an Ocean's 9 yet. I would like more of this series, basically.
Yeah.
Because they're good movies and they're fun, and I also very much like Soderbergh. I think he's done some of my favorite movies. I would say he's
brilliant.
He's excellent, and even I would say honestly, he's actually done some of my favorite television as well. Like I don't know if you've ever watched The Nick, but The Nick is excellent. And
The number of times you've tried to sell me on the Nick, and I tried watching it and it didn't land, but that was a long time ago. Maybe I should retry.
you definitely should,
I want to
because
watch his basketball movie that he shot on iPhone with
that's a good movie. High Flying Bird. That's a good movie.
yeah, I want to see that. And he also did a new like a mystery series out on Prime that had no fanfare, just got released. What was
Yes,
the name of that?
I can't remember the name of it, but it's out on. It came up when I was watching movie stuff at Tribeca, and I have not had a
I'm
chance to
really
catch up with it.
happy. I'm really happy that he's so prolific and he's really happy just to make stuff with like whatever he's got lying around.
Yeah,
Basically, like he's got so many stories to tell, and his framing and his editing and his lighting just beautiful. And I really enjoy how he is quite. I'm not sure experimental is the right word, but he does a lot, and it seems to be whatever he's got in his mind that he wants to tell. He doesn't seem to do these like big full productions all the time. He does like lots of little things. And I really appreciate that.
I mean, he's definitely experimental. He's like, um, he's made at least he's made a couple movies now just using iPhones and using
Mm-hmm,
weird like sort of not filmmaking like anti patterns. He's a really interesting guy. He
mm-hmm,
also often acts. If you look at the credits for his movies, he often acts as his own editor and cinematographer as well.
mm-hmm.
So he's often doing all three things. And he uses different names for what are they? Uh, I could like a month ago I could have just told you this off the top of my head, but my memory is 40 years old now. Um, but basically, he when he makes a film, if you look at the credits, you can see a couple of names in particular, and those names are just him. And it's almost always
Mm-hmm,
cinematographer and editor as well. And he
mm-hmm.
uses specific names for those specific credits. And
Cool.
it happens a lot of the time.
Yeah, he's
uh,
great.
where is it? Sorry, go on.
No,
Talk more.
I there's too much Soderbergh I haven't seen for someone who I love so much. I've seen a lot of his films, but I would like time. I would just like time to watch a lot of things, but especially all the little projects that he's done. Um, Even if I don't like the film completely, like I don't think out of what's that Clooney Lopez movie?
Out of Sight is
Something
my favorite of his
Out
films
of Sight.
by
Interesting.
far.
Is that your favorite? So it perfectly encapsulates my feelings towards Soderbergh. Is that I'm not sure that film necessarily lands for me the same it does for you, but it is so sumptuous to look at, and it is so he's so good at capturing chemistry between actors, and not just like sexual chemistry, unless you want to say like that the two leads in Ocean's 11, like Clooney and Pitt, definitely have something going on. That wonderful scene where he comes in and they're watching Oprah give away like beds to everyone. It's just
Yeah,
wonderful, and he's so good
that
at
is
chemistry.
that movie is also just like legitimately one of the sexiest movies maybe ever
Mm-hmm.
made.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so when he acts as his own cinematographer, he's credited under the name Peter Andrews, which is his father's name. And when
Mm-hmm.
he's credited for editing, his credit under the name Marianne Bernard, which is his mother's name.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's nice. I
like it's
like
his
that.
mother's maiden name and his father's like middle two names or something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
it's his mother and his father. So when you
Oh.
watch a Soderbergh movie or any movie that he might be involved in, and you see those two names, that's him.
Mm-hmm. That's
And
great.
like it's like how I think one of the Magic Mikes is directed by someone else, but it's actually he's still the cinematographer. I just love that he's like involved at many different levels as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
he's a great and prolific. He's also super interesting. If you can go find any of he's given speeches at film festivals and such about like the art and business of filmmaking, and they're always super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go on his website, he's done things like he did like a black and white re-edit of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is
Oh,
really
I have
interesting to
it.
watch.
Yeah, I downloaded it when it was still online before it got taken
Yeah,
down. It's lovely. It's really good.
and it's like black and white, and it uses the score from The Social Network. I think super interesting, and he just does stuff like that.
Oh my god, Social Network, of course. Yeah, that's what the music is. I was trying to place it. No, he's
Yeah.
great. Um,
Yeah. So he's great. He's a great filmmaker, and I love the stuff he does. And I haven't seen Full Circle is the name of that show we're talking about, and
yeah.
I have not seen it yet. I also, interestingly, haven't seen what was it called? No Sudden Move, which is that period shot, I think, heist movie that was released during the middle of the pandemic. That
You know
has
what's a
like Don Cheadle and Benicio del Toro and a bunch of other people in it.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Do you know what's a really interesting movie? Is that action movie with the Rhoda Ramsey? Oh, what's her name?
Ronda Rousey.
The wrestler, the female wrestler who was in Mandalorian. He did an action movie with her, and he
Oh,
had
you're
to
talking about
dub.
Gina Carano.
Oh, am I? Who's Rhoda Ramsey then?
She's a different UFC fighter.
Oh, okay. Haywire. Haywire.
Yeah.
So that's not a good film, and it's really interesting to see. Uh, he made a big swing. I do like how he makes big casting swings as well. Like I think the Girlfriend Experience is a really good example of him getting that right, and Haywire is a
Hmm.
great example of maybe him getting that wrong because he had to redub her because she didn't say anything correctly, and she's also a terrible person, but
Yeah.
it's still it's not a good movie, it's still so interesting to watch because of his everything he brings to it.
I would even go so far as to say that like charisma void of a central performance notwithstanding, it's actually a very well constructed film. Like it's not bad. It's just not good. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Yeah,
Like
no,
it's
I agree.
got too many like strikes against it to be quote like great or even maybe even like. But
Good, it's not even good.
it's so technically good that
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
still an
exactly.
interesting watch. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my point. I mean, that's what makes him such an interesting director. Even if the movie doesn't work as well as his others, it's still sumptuous.
Yeah, but then he also just does interesting things. Like, did you know he was second unit director on the Hunger Games?
No, what?
Yeah, like
What?
there's a riot scene in the Hunger Games, and he directed that because it was a second unit thing. Like he,
What's he? What? But
yeah,
he was established by that point.
yep,
Like,
yep.
so he just did it for funsies.
I guess he did. He was a second unit director in August 2011 on the Hunger Games, and then in September October he shot Magic Mike the same year.
Oh, Magic Mike! Now that is a good movie, especially the second one. What a
Yeah.
film that is! I
Well,
haven't seen the third
this
one yet.
the second one is the one he was cinematographer but not director for, which is just
Oh, really?
interesting. Yeah,
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that.
it's a whole thing. But like the director of the second one, um, Gregory Jacobs, I'm pretty sure is like his boy, like one of his
Mm-hmm.
uh, like ongoing collaborative partners, basically.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think he was a producer or something on Magic Mike. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's a producer on. Um, let's see here. Greg Jacobs was a producer on. Holy shit! Like all of them. Yeah, basically everything. So
Mm-hmm.
Out of Sight, The Limey, Aaron Brockovich, Price of not him, Traffic, Ocean's 11, Solaris, Ocean's 12, Ocean's 13, Che, The Girlfriend Experience, Informant, Contagion, Haywire, Magic Mike, Side Effects, Magic Mike XL was the first one he directed. Like so
Bloody hell!
he's been working with Soderbergh for a while.
Oh, that's
Interestingly, he
amazing
was
training.
also producer on Edge of Tomorrow, which is a great film.
Huh.
So, and after Magic Mike XSL, he also was a producer on Logan Lucky and The Laundromat. So he's been working with Soderbergh
Uh,
for a while.
I haven't seen Logan Lucky, and I know you love that film. I should definitely try and get on that.
I have not seen The Laundromat, and I've heard very mixed things. But Logan Lucky is excellent, and
Mm-hmm.
you should 100% watch it. If you and especially
Mm-hmm.
actually if you like the Ocean's movies, you should
Mm-hmm.
100% watch Logan Lucky. It is so good,
Is
and
it
it was
child friendly?
also the we all love. Um, Daniel Craig as the Benoit Blanc now, playing like really big and sort of against type from his James Bond days in now. But Logan Lucky was the first film where he did that, and it's amazing. And he plays like a career criminal and explosives expert called Joe Bang, and he's so good.
Okay, that's on the list.
And like, I think your kids will like it. And I swear to, I'm going to apologize in advance, because at least one of your children every day will, like, during like making dinner or something, will hold up a bag and be like, "This is science." And when you get the context of that, it'll be even funnier.
Right. So it's a child-friendly movie?
It's as child-friendly as any of the Ocean's films are.
Oh,
so,
okay. Oh, perfect. Yeah. Okay.
It's basically Ocean's 11, but like in the South, like in the deep South.
Hick Ocean's 11.
something like that. And I don't want to spoil it for you, but like, it uses that conceit. It's so good. And then there's a scene where like an 11-year-old sings a John Denver song that'll make you like tear up. It's so good.
That's awesome. Okay, sold.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Good. Well, now that we've bantered suitably about Steven Soderbergh,
we love him.
shall we move on to the main show? So before we do, let's just get some housekeeping out of the way. First and foremost, if you like the show, if you're listening to the show, we do have a Patreon, and you can find that at patreon.com/mcsimpson. And it costs less than, it's $2 a month is the entry-level tier, and you get a bonus conversation as well. This week we talked at length about the strikes, and also about purchasing movies for home. I think those conversations are super interesting, and they're super cheap to buy into. So please do that and help us keep the lights on. Also, to help us keep the lights on, if you go to the homepage for this episode, which will be awesomefriday.ca/ whatever it's going to be, it'll be in the show notes. There are links to go to where you can stream the things we're talking about. And if you use those links, they also help us keep the lights on. So please do that. That'd be great. And then last but not least, obviously this episode is produced during the ongoing Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild strikes. And none of the things we're going to be talking about, a movie and a show, neither of them will be possible without the love, care, and attention and labor of the... You are laughing at me, and I don't know why, but without the...
I'm not laughing at you at all.
Yeah, without the care, attention, and labor of the people who made them, and we obviously support the unions and hope that they get everything they are asking for, because they've been being boned over for the last 15 years. So just know that is true.
Sorry, I chose the absolutely wrong moment to look at a Star Wars meme, which I've now sent you. So yeah, it was completely inappropriate. We're not laughing. We're not laughing at the strikes. Yeah.
That's a thing for sure. I am not going to share that with the crowd.
No. Anyway, but yes, we're in solidarity. We feel for them, absolutely.
Yeah, I legitimately hope that they get everything. I hope they stay on strike as long as it takes to get everything they're asking for. Yes. And when just another reminder that when you see things like Variety with a headline saying that the studios have come back with their best and final offer, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
It's not like the studios can just dictate we're going back to work now. But also that Variety in particular and most of the major trades are owned by the same groups that own the studios and have a vested interest in the strike being over. So bear that in mind. Anyway, let's move on to the main show. We're going to talk about film, and then we're going to talk about a television show. We're going to start with the film because it is technically already out. So, Simon, why don't you take us through the brief introduction to the film that is No One Will Save You?
So, No One Will Save You is about a home. If you've seen the trailer, basically it's a home invasion, but it's not just a usual person home invasion, but it's an alien in a home, basically. And Caitlin Dever is the homeowner. And the great thing about this movie is that I think it's fair to say it's dialogue free. There's a couple of words at some point, but it is mainly dialogue free. So there is a really interesting piece of physical theater and a really interesting piece of visual storytelling. And basically, we don't know why, but she's got a lot of issues in the town she lives with, and this is slowly unfurled as we watch the movie. And then in amongst this is this horrible realization that things have arrived, and things are not friendly, and things are in her home. And I don't want to say much more than that, because if you watch the trailer, and I actually absolutely encourage you to watch the trailer, because it's a very clever trailer in that it tells you enough about the setup, but there's a lot that the trailer doesn't cover, and it's a really interesting approach to marketing of this movie, because it's just enough that you need to know. So that it's really well shot. Obviously, it's quite a risk to take a story that naturally would have some words and make it almost completely dialogue free. Caitlin Dever is a fantastic actor, and she does a really great job at conveying the feelings of Bryn, her character, and the uh, the the guilt that we learn she has about certain things that really color her actions and the way she controls those actions. And this movie was so near to being my movie of the year, and I can't, without spoiling it, I can't really tell you why it's not. But it makes it chooses a resolution, and cards on the table. I can't tell you if I actually understand it, and not because it's weird in a 2001 kind of way, like it in a story direction it goes in, and I can't, as you said, I can't quite connect how it goes from A to B, and I kind of wish it hadn't done that, because everything up to a very specific point in this film was really, really good. Like, you've got a combination of whoever this director is. I'm sure you'll tell me he's some big guy, but he's got Brian Duffield, who I've not heard of, but he's really, really good at framing and having things emerge from the back to the front, and editing it together. And Kenton Deaver is really good. There's a couple of moments where she's, maybe it feels a little unnatural. She's not saying anything, and she perhaps overplays things a touch. But generally speaking, she's fantastic. It also made me realize that I talk to myself all the time. I'm by myself. I work from home by myself, and it made me realize I talk to myself all the time, because there's no way I would be going through this movie dialogue free. I would be screaming obscenities left, right, and center. Um, it's a really, really good technical um, example of how to make a film without dialogue. I just wish the ending, I wish the last 20 minutes had been completely different. And I can't really say much more than that.
I
What's your
would go
take?
so far as to say that I basically agree with everything you're saying, and I would go so far as to say it's not even the last 20 minutes; it's like the last five. Like there's
Oh, okay.
like it's really just the very, 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 very end for me, where there's like a bit of a it's and again I can't speak about it without it in any kind of depth without it being a spoiler, but like there's a moment where it goes from A to B, and I'm like, how did you make that leap? Like, how did this film make
Mm,
that leap? And why did it make that leap? Why is this happening now? Like, I get everything up to a certain point, and then like basically like the last scene happens, and I was like, what? Like, why?
mm,
How do you what? Um,
mm,
and I don't think I liked it overall as much as I think you did. Um,
mm,
but like, I think it's a great film. I think Caitlin Dever is great. I don't think you're wrong that she overplays, sort of overacts a couple of times. But in a film without dialogue, I'm not really sure that's inappropriate. Because there's
mm,
definitely some times where like she needs to get some shit across that like she kind of needed to go there. Is all I'm trying to say.
mm,
And but yeah, it's really for me. It is literally just the very end, and the very end, honestly, is a super well shot. Just like the last scene is a very well shot thing, and in and of itself, like if you put it in isolation, you'd be like, wow, that's amazing. But I don't quite know how it gets from the end of the second last shot to the beginning of the last scene.
mm.
I don't quite grok the logic there. Is all I'm trying to say, and it's otherwise, it's great though. Like, it's definitely worth watching. Like, and if you buy into the ending, I'm very happy for you. I don't like no, I don't get it, but that's fine. But the rest of the movie, like the preceding 98% of the movie, is incredible. It's an
It's
incredible
really good.
performance. There's some really great monster design. There's some amazing sound and lighting design that really highlight the anxiety of the home invasion and the alien invasion in particular. The alien designs are familiar, but also different and interesting. Um, and it's
Creepy too.
amazing. It's amazing what like just the addition of an extra joint will do to what making an arm behave a little bit differently can be so effectively creepy in a way that you just don't expect.
Yeah, yeah.
And like the production design, the town and she lives in um, feels very authentically like a small town, right down to she's obviously I don't think it's a spoiler to say she's a bit of a social pariah at the start of the film for
Mm-hmm.
reasons that are illuminated throughout. But when she does encounter real people, the way that people behave around her, as a person who grew up in a small town, is very authentic. And there's a couple of scenes where it feels like they might be going toward dialogue, and then they don't, and they are far more effective as a result, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I've been on the Caitlin Dever's a great actress for a while, trained for a while now, so I'm just happy she's got this new amazing performance thriller out there. So,
Yeah, she's great.
I would say that you definitely have heard of Brian Duffield before. This is not his directorial debut. He made a movie in 2020 called Spontaneous, which I don't know if you've seen, but you've definitely seen
No.
Underwater, which he wrote, and
No, I
and
have
you,
that.
and you've
I love
definitely
that film.
and I hope you've seen Love and Monsters, which he also wrote. Although I think
I,
Love and Monsters went through a
no,
rewrite
I
with
didn't
somebody
watch it.
else, but Love and Monsters is also great. But yeah,
Do you
Underwater,
know?
he wrote Underwater.
Do you know what's so interesting about that? Is that I love all but the last 5 minutes of Underwater, and I wish I could change the last 5 minutes of that movie. How interesting! This guy can't stick his landings.
Yeah, I think
Oh
Underwater was maybe rewritten. Like I think it had a rewrite.
man, that movie was so close to being amazing. I wish they changed the last 5 minutes of that too. Well, it shares a lot in common with this film then, in terms of how I feel about it.
I would say that Underwater and this have a lot of shared DNA in that I find Underwater. I don't have strong feelings about the end of Underwater, but I will say that it is incredibly rewatchable. Like I've watched it number of times, and my wife
Yes.
watches it all the time.
Oh, good. Oh, I
Like,
see. That's a
like,
good sign.
like all the time.
That's
I'm
great.
sure it's just underwater alien, but at the same time, like that's great. Like that's a great setup,
Yeah,
and
it's really good.
it's and Kristen Stewart is really good in it.
Yep. Jessica Henwick
So
as well.
and
Brilliant.
Jessica Henwick and everyone who's in it. Vincent Cassell is really great in it.
Everyone.
Oh well,
I don't.
except for
Yeah.
even the guy we've canceled is exactly the guy he was when we canceled him,
Yes.
and until we canceled him, we thought he was great. So he's not. It's not a bad performance. It's just that he's been
A
canceled.
little uncomfortable now, but yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it
Uh,
is a great film.
but
Do
yeah,
you know
it's
why?
a and I
Do you
imagine
know
that
why?
this will be incredibly actually, and this one might even be helped by the lack of dialogue for being rewatchable because you could just put it on and not have to you can just watch. It's great.
It does a really interesting thing. There's a lot of subversion of expectations in this movie
Mm-hmm.
because if I said alien home invasion, you would predict, okay, this is going to happen, and it does, but it happens in the first 25 minutes, and then you realize you've seen everything in the trailer, and like where you've had the home invasion, and it's kind of been resolved, and you're like, well, where the hell is this movie going to go for the last hour? And it makes some. I've got to commend it for making some story decisions even before we get to the bit that I wish it could change. It slows down a little. There's some great action actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's one particular like chasing that's excellent, and the aliens are really have some really weird behavior that you can't quite translate into human behavior, which I think is really effective.
Mm-hmm.
But it does slow down. It does go a lot into sort of brings guilt about a situation and her how it affects her mentally as well. And I think that's really interesting. Oh, this is so close to being good. Great. Sorry, this is so close to being great. It's kind of frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I still really liked it. I imagine I'll be
I did.
rewatching it. It's out now. It's on Disney Plus here in Canada. It's on Hulu in the States, and I imagine that it will be incredibly rewatchable.
Do you know? Do you know what will be nice? I know if you're listening, if you are another film reviewer and you use Disney Debut, which is their preview channel to watch stuff, it's going to be really nice to watch this visual masterpiece without my email address across the middle third of the screen. That would be. I really look forward to that because Disney, you could ease up a little on the watermarking, just a touch, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
What's really interesting is that compared to previous films we've watched from Disney, the watermark was actually less intrusive this time, but it's still anyway.
Still bloody though.
It's still
Yeah.
still over the top, I
So,
would say.
so how many stars are you going with? No One Will Save You then.
So for me, it is a 4.
Oh, interesting.
It is actually because it's so technically good, and because it's really just the last little bit that I didn't like. I'm
Interesting.
still going to give it a 4. I It's another one I think we talked about last week where I've had a really hard time deciding between it being a 3 and a 4.
Mm-hmm.
Where
Mm-hmm.
that gulf has seemed never seemed wider. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, I think it's just a 4. It's like just
Yeah.
like not only a
I
4, but like it is into 4 range would be the way I put it.
I was going to go 3, but I'm absolutely convinced. And yes, it's a 4 from me too. And in the weird way, would you know what I mean? If this maybe this is just nostalgia speaking, but this is a 20th century production, which is of course 20th century Fox before they got subsumed by Disney, and it feels like a 20th century Fox movie. Would you know
Hmm.
what I mean by that? They had a really good run, especially with Searchlight as well, of making sort of mid-budget interesting things, and this feels like a mid-budget interesting thing. And I kind of miss the pre-Disney 20th Century Fox.
I
But
mean, it
hey,
does feel a bit homogenized, but that's a whole thing.
that's the whole thing. Yeah, 4 stars from me too. It's worth. I will watch this again, and maybe now I know where it's going because that last scene is beautifully done. It's just beautiful. I just need that connection in my mind of how it gets there and what it's trying to say, uh, because it's such a jump
Yeah,
from what's happened up to that point. So
I would love to talk to Mr. Duffield about his
yes,
intent with the last little
yeah,
bit, and I'm sure that
I have
somebody
theories.
will. So,
Yeah, I have
uh,
theories,
yeah,
but
I'm sure
4 stars
someone
from me too.
I'm sure someone will interview him and get the answers. So I'm looking forward to
Hmm.
reading that when it happens.
Cool.
So yeah, 4 and definitely watch it. um,
Yes.
but let's move on to for those of you who don't know, I would know. Would you go so far as to say that you're a big fan of Mike Flanagan, Simon?
I certainly haven't seen as much as you have, but Midnight Mass is one of the best things I've ever seen. I
Yeah.
really like Hush. I think Hush, again, it's a female-led home invasion, one of my favorite genres. So I like Hush. He's really really good at editing, and I think that's like the key to good horror is knowing how to edit and knowing how to frame and knowing how to edit to get the audience right at the right moment. It's almost like music. And I also his writing is not naturalistic, it's monologue heavy, but it works really well, and he is a beautiful writer. He's just really lovely, and he writes the kind of things, there's the kind of monologues that I would just want to memorize for future auditions. And the Usher is no exception. There's one particular monologue. It's less monologue heavy, I would say, than previous things I've seen, but there's one in particular that is outstanding,
so
and
I
the writing is great.
so I'll disagree because it's monologue different, but it's interesting you say he's a good editor because before he was a director he was an editor.
Oh, really? Well, there we
Yeah,
are.
but we are
Yeah.
talking about his latest for Netflix and his swan song for Netflix, actually, the fall of the House of Usher.
Maybe I should
Um,
ask you the same question before you introduce us. Are you a Mike Flanagan and Edgar Allan Poe fan by any chance?
I mean,
And now
as
go.
as discussed on last week's bonus show, yes, Edgar Allan Poe is one of my all-time favorite poets in particular, but also like Yeah, a wildly influential writer in both American fiction and my life.
So
um,
I'm going to
like,
sit back and get comfy and just let you go now. Like, tell us about
did,
Usher.
did you know that Edgar Allan Poe invented the detective story as we understand it today?
I did not know that. Thank
Yeah,
you for
his
telling me.
his his story, The Murder in the Rue Morgue, was the first one that was
I
basically
can't.
a
I
detective
can't be
story
true.
that came before Sherlock Holmes, before Agatha Christie, before all of them.
No, no, that
Features
can't
a
be true.
roguish outsider investigating a crime. Uh, yeah, he basically invented the detective fiction genre. True story. Um, so yeah, we're talking about
Yeah.
the
Wow. Cool.
Fall of the House of Usher, which is Mike Flanagan adapting the works of Edgar Allan Poe. Um, a pitch that was never more made for me than anything. Like, I don't know how you could pitch something that would be less for me. Um, and it's difficult to speak about. So this show, unlike the movie we just talked about, which is available now, The Fall of the House of Usher, it does not debut on Netflix until the 12th of October. So that is going to be like 2 weeks from now. Um, so it's difficult. There's things we can't really talk about. But basically, the this is an adaptation of the works of Poe. So there are a lot of, if you're a fan of the writing of Edgar Allan Poe, there's going to be a lot of elements that you're going to like, and a lot that you'll recognize. Like, even the framing story of this 8 episode series is effectively taken from The Fall of the House of Usher, with uh, a man comes to a house and Roderick Usher tells him a story, and then Roderick Usher has a sister. This is all out there, but it's all adapted into something new. It's all of this is remixed into something new. Each episode takes its name from the title of a poem or story, and then uses elements from those stories in interesting ways. And if it sounds like I'm dancing around stuff, it's because I am, because again, we have limits on what we're allowed to talk about when it comes to this show. But it's really good. Shocker. I don't know. it's uh, it's
You're trying desperately not to spoil anything. I do appreciate that.
yeah. I mean, so we're under pretty heavy embargo with the things we are and are not allowed to say. However, it's really good. It's really interesting. It takes a lot. It's not just a straight adaptation. It is definitely a remix, and it's not a remix of any one story. It's basically like he's adapting Edgar Allan Poe, not any one story from Edgar Allan Poe. There's elements
Mm.
from multiple stories that are mixed in. Stories, real life events. There's a character who's named after one of Edgar Allan Poe's like mentor figures in his life. There's again, there's elements from multiple. Each episode does take its name from a specific story, but there's elements of multiple stories and multiple things in each one of those episodes. And Simon is correct in that the series is not as monologue heavy, at least in terms of original writing, uh, as some of his other work. However, that is because sometimes the monologues are just Edgar Allan Poe poems, which is fucking incredible when you have people like Bruce Greenwood and Carla Gugino reading them. I don't think it's a stretch for anyone to realize that I really liked this show. I've actually already written a review, which you can go read on thatshelf.com,
It's good. It's good reading.
um, in which I wrote 1,200 plus words and feel like I barely scratched the surface of anything about it. Um, I would also say, like, if you are familiar with the works of Mike Flanagan, you'll know that he has this like cohort of performers that seemingly will drop anything to be like, "Oh, you want to do a show together? Yes, to go do a show together." Like, everyone wants to come work with him, and
Good time.
this show is basically like an all-star game of everyone he's
Mm.
worked with while he's been at Netflix. So,
Mm.
um, I mean, who it'd be easier to list the new people in it, like Mary McDonnell is in this. McDonald.
Mark
Um,
McDonald.
is in this. It's the first time she's worked with Flanagan. So same with Willa Fitzgerald, and same with Mark Hamill is in this, and he's great. And it's the first time he's worked with Mike Flanagan. But literally every other named character, of which there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's like a dozen, are all people who has worked with him before. So Carla Gugino is here, Bruce Greenwood is here, Carl Lumley is here, Samantha Sloyan is here, Tanai Miller, Rahul Kohli, Kate Siegel, Katie Parker, Michael Trucco, Henry Thomas, like Kaylee Curran is here. Like all of these people are people who have worked with him on at least one or two things, at least before, and I think it really informs as to what kind of a person he must be, Mike Flanagan must be, and what kind of set he creates, but also just that like he's so good at getting great performances out of all these people. And I know we don't 100% agree on who's great in this and who's not, but there's
that's not
there's
important, really.
there's enough great people in it that the one that we don't necessarily agree on doesn't matter, so I don't even want to mention it. Basically,
Yeah, that wouldn't. No, yeah,
yeah,
no. It's a very small point.
yeah. And then there's just like he's so good at creating the tone, right? Like if you watch his work, he's got a very distinct visual tone. He's got a very distinct tone in his writing that remains very consistent throughout. And and he actually only directed. He wrote this whole series, but he actually only directed half of the episodes. The other half being taken up by his longtime collaborator, Michael Filmogari. I don't know how to pronounce his name. I'm sorry, Filmogari. But they've been working together for so long that the whole thing feels very consistent. All the performances are consistent. Everything about it is consistent. They clearly have a very close working relationship. And I thought it was great. I thought it was definitely one to add to your watch list. And I mean, Mike Flanagan has since signed a deal where his new stuff will be going. He's signed a first look deal with Amazon Prime. So he'll be moving to Amazon Prime, which I think is a pretty big loss for Netflix, given the Midnight Mass and Haunting of Hill House of it all. But if this is going to be the last thing he's going to make for Netflix, like what a thing to make, right? Like what a big. I'm glad that they have let him make such a big, ambitious swing as his last thing, and I'm glad that it works. And I know that you don't 100% agree that it works, but overall, I would say that it works very, very well.
So I don't say it. I wouldn't say that my opinion is it doesn't work. I don't think I liked it as much as you, but I'm kind of conflicted because everything you said is correct. Everything. Mike Flanagan is a brilliant writer, a brilliant filmmaker, and a brilliant director, and he's clearly doing something here that he's been thinking about for a long time, because the integration of Poe's stuff with the way that he takes the elements and adds it to the story, and it doesn't feel disjointed at all. It just feels like it naturally all fits together. Speaks to an incredible in-depth understanding of the story he's trying to tell and Poe's themes, how they can fit in as well. So I think it could have been shorter. I think 6 instead of 8 episodes, maybe. Don't ask me what I would cut out, but I feel like it could have been slimmed down a little bit. There's 2 episodes of the 8 that are amongst the best TV episodes I've ever seen. And in fact, one of the episodes that centers around Samantha Sloyan is probably one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen. And there's certain creative choices taken in that episode that are breathtaking, just incredible. The way the story is told, and not just through the acting. I mean, she's just one of the best actors around at the moment. She's just phenomenal, and the visuals as well. But there's a certain decision made with editing that is so simple and so amazingly perfect. I'm amazed I haven't seen it done that way before, and it's just fantastic. I think many of his group, and it feels like a rep theatre group by this point, which is lovely too. Many of the actors of that group, this is their best work. I've never seen Kate Siegel be better than in this. I think she is absolutely on fire. She has
Mm-hmm.
a brilliant script. She is just owning. She owns every scene, and uh, it's I don't know. I'm not sure if it's brave is the right word, but having your wife as one of your main collaborators and directing your wife or writing for your wife is a tricky thing to do, I think. And she is just incredible, incredible in this. I think, excuse my pronunciation, but Rahul Kohli, a British guy. I think this is best he's ever been, and he was great in Midnight Mass, but he is so good in this at being this cocky British dude who slowly sort of unpeels. I mean, that's a common theme
Yeah.
for each of these kids, each of these episodes, is that they start from a terrible place and then terrible things happen to them and they unravel, and it's interesting to see how that happens. Also, I've never seen Willa Fitzgerald in anything, but I thought she was phenomenal, and I would
Yep.
love to know the work that she and Mary McDonnell did to ensure that their style of speaking is so precisely similar. It's uncanny, and I would love to see the work they did find that. A standout for me was a young actor that I've not seen before called Kylie Curran, that you've seen in Doctor Sleep, but I haven't seen Doctor Sleep. 17-year-old, phenomenal performance, and
Let me
Bruce Greenwood,
just. This is just a perfect moment for me to say, just go fucking watch Doctor Sleep already. It's
I've
so
tried to watch half of
good.
it.
It's so good.
Yeah, but I mean, I could just keep listing cast members. Mark Hamill, like people still joke about him being Luke Skywalker. He is an incredible actor in this. Bruce Greenwood was a late replacement, and it feels like the part was written for him. And I
Mm-hmm.
could just keep going on and on and on. There's a few of the performances that I do not find convincing. I don't need to name them, but it's vastly outbalanced by the incredible performances in this. But as a whole, I liked it a lot. It didn't land the same level as Midnight Mass did. There's one particular lemon monologue that I want Bruce Greenwood to read to me every single day of my life, and it's masterly put together. I think it could have been a little bit shorter. Some of it I found a bit cheesy, I have to say. Some of the horror elements didn't quite work as well as others. But I mean, it's still a master at horror doing the thing he loves with the people who are like career best acting. It's
Yeah.
hard not to recommend this, really.
I mean, yeah. I would say that like the performances that aren't maybe quite as good aren't bad for me. I would say that just that like when you put someone who's doing good work next to someone who's absolutely on fire, it kind of stands out to me.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely.
because I think there's you're right that like there's definitely people who are like more on fire than others in here, but everyone is so into the material and committed to the material and clearly love working together, which is another thing. Like they all seem to have such trust between one another,
Hmm.
and that really comes through in the work. And I would say that it's a little more uneven than something like Midnight Mass, just and that's sort of by not design, but like sort of just by the nature of the way the material is being adapted. Midnight Mass, I would still say is his best TV work. Um, but it's a very singular type of story, right? Whereas this is an adaptation of several stories and multiple elements from many stories, and so it's just never going to come together in exactly the same level of consistency.
Mm.
Um, and I think, for better or for worse, maybe that's a good thing. You know, maybe that's something that will allow us to keep talking about it in the future. I'm super curious once this show goes live. I'll be super curious to see like what everyone's favorite episode is. And
Mm.
we are not allowed to say that right now, just for the record, so we won't. Um, or at least we're not allowed to talk about the details. But the one that Simon mentioned was
Mm.
Samantha Sloyan is. I don't know why she's not a huge star. Basically, she's so good.
Mm.
If you remember her performances in Midnight Mass in particular, but even her smaller supporting role in Hill House, where she has one of the best monologues in the entire show, because she just like
Mm,
chews, like she makes it a 4-course meal out of the scenery in that one scene
mm,
without moving. She's basically just sitting in a chair the whole time, and it's an incredible thing
yeah,
to watch.
she's
Um,
got so much going on. It's incredible.
and she's just so good at, like, she has this ability to, even if she's not talking to you, it's like she's looking through the camera directly into you and like ripping apart your soul. it's
And
she's so good at it.
it's the each of the episodes, as I mentioned earlier, has this unraveling aspect. They start somewhere and then they disintegrate, and I think most of the children conveyed that beautifully. And she's at the top, like the top of that pyramid for me. uh the performances that didn't land for me are the ones that didn't handle the unraveling aspect. And I know we disagree about one key actor that I don't think the performance was robust enough. I think the script was there. I don't think the performance was. But she in uh, just her episode is like, if you've got any interest in acting whatsoever, then make sure you watch at least. I mean, you should watch the whole thing because
Mm-hmm.
you've got an incredible ensemble performance here. But watch uh, Kate Siegel and Rahul Cooley, and especially Samantha Sloyan, just how they handle that shift. It's just mind blowing. She's
Yeah,
incredible.
and then like, I would say of those episodes, mine is favorite is probably Kate Siegel's.
Ah, so good. Oh my
But
god.
I mean, for me,
Yeah.
the bigger, and we can't. It's difficult to talk about because we're legitimately not allowed to talk about the nature of her character. But Carla Gugino is on fire in every single episode of this show. In what might be, it's a quite a varied performance. Um,
So
but like she,
confident in
but
all
it's
that variation as well.
but every aspect of it is so confident. She's on fire the whole
Mm,
time. She's in complete control the whole time, and her interaction with every character is a delight to behold. And in particular with Bruce Greenwood, she has such a chemistry with Bruce Greenwood in particular. And I don't know if that was developed because they're friends or because they worked together previously on Gerald's Game, but like they are, every scene they share is such a delight to watch. And occasionally, occasionally you get to hear one of those two recite an Edgar Allan Poe poem, and it is the best version of that you've heard, with the exception of when the Raven finally happens, because you know it's going to happen. It is excellent, and it is maybe the only one that isn't the best one I've ever heard, because The Simpsons did the Raven 30 years ago.
mm.
Um, and they had,
Can't be
and
James
more to
Earl
the
Jones.
point, they had James Earl Jones to do it. So that's a hard ask. But when
Yeah.
the Raven happens this time, it is also excellent. But in particular, For Annie is excellent. Annabelle Lee is excellent. Um, like every recitation of a poem in this is excellent and
Mhm,
thematically appropriate and emotionally devastating when it happens.
mhm,
And then like the frame of the whole thing, which is just Bruce Greenwood and Carl Lumley sitting in a ruined house lit by firelight, discussing the many
mhm,
terrible acts of Roderick Usher, with Carl Lumley being like an investigator slash prosecutor, um, who's been after him his entire career. Those scenes are excellent. Like if you wanted to learn about acting, like sure you should definitely watch Samantha Sloyan's episode, but you should actually just fast forward to the scenes where Bruce Greenwood and
mhm.
Carl Lumley are sitting across from one another and creating something you cannot turn away from whilst sitting still in chairs. I mean,
I said this to you, like I texted. Yeah, it really became apparent that Bruce Greenwood,
yeah.
Bruce Greenwood is the narrative linchpin of this whole thing, and
Oh yeah,
it is such a risk to have the wrong actor in that position will ruin the whole thing, as they almost did by all accounts. I can't believe he was a late stand-in halfway through production because, like I said, it's like it's he owned it. It was made for him, and he's so good. But also your other guy, sorry I don't remember his name, your Augie, whoever played Augie.
Carl Lumley.
Have I seen him and stuff before? He seems famous.
He's a
uh
long-standing character actor. He's also in Doctor Sleep, which is where he's worked with Flanagan before.
Right.
He's been in like a legitimate ton of stuff though. Lots of TV, um,
Right.
lots of movies. He was in Captain America and the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and he will be in Captain America: Brave New
Right.
World. He
Right.
showed up in Battlestar Galactica. He's been around for
Oh.
a long time. Is all I'm trying
Oh,
to say.
there's three Galactica alumni in this show. Then,
Yep.
so he does a really interesting thing in that when you've got someone as the narrative lead and someone talking to them, the person talking to them has to balance that they don't soak up all the air between them. Like you got to keep the focus on the other guy when you're asking your questions while still being great. And he was fantastic at that. Like it
Yeah.
was he was he it's easy to try and push your performance to an equal level as the narrative lead, and it was just a great balance. And poor Mike Flanagan to be halfway through production and to lose his narrative lead and have to recast it and all the questions that come with it. And I'm so happy he ended up with what I think is the perfect duo to carry this story over 8 hours of TV. You couldn't have asked for anything more. I thought they were phenomenal.
Yeah, and I kind of wonder because the original actor was going to be wow, his name is gone.
Frank Langella.
Frank Langella, who is a great actor, to be fair. But he was fired for being sexually inappropriate with the female cast members. So
Okay.
I will say that one of the other things is that Frank Langella is also just a towering presence in a way that Bruce Greenwood is. Uh, Sounds like a dig, but it's not. He's much more of a character performer, and I feel like having them be like just like on a more equal level to one another also helps the narrative. Like I feel like Frank Langella might
Absolutely.
have been a little overpowering to the story. Like it
Absolutely.
might have been the Frank Langella show rather than this show. And I think that this show is better than that would have been.
I mean, we'll never see it, but they shot half of it in with him in it, so his scenes are out there somewhere. I would love to see his scenes to compare them to Bruce Greenwood. We'll never ever see it, but I would be so interested to see the difference.
Yeah. And it turns out that even an 84-year-old can be sexually
Yeah,
predator. It's
it's
fucking
not
terrible.
hard. Can these like men go on sets and not be assholes? Can that just stop happening? It's not difficult to just respect people professionally.
I mean,
Like just
apparently it is.
don't be
Um,
sexually inappropriate to people in work. I think that's
yeah.
pretty straightforward. Can we
Yeah.
just stop doing that? Uh,
So yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to recommend the series.
how many?
I'm I mean, I'm sad. I want to say that I'm sad to see him leave Netflix. I think Netflix has been a very good home for him, for Flanagan, over these past several years. Hopefully, Amazon gives him the same leeway and the same budget levels. But if this is going to be the last thing he makes for Netflix, it's I mean, what a thing to
Uh,
make.
I think a big factor actually was that Netflix don't release any physical copies of their own productions, and he was desperate to get Haunted House out on 4K, and they refused. And I think that was a pretty big
Well, I know
motivator to put together Prime.
they also so you can buy a Blu-ray of House of the Hill House and a Bly Manor, but they're not out on 4K as far as I know. But he would very much like. I know for a fact he wants a physical release of Midnight Mass, and they just won't do it.
Mm.
And whereas like Amazon, like you can buy their stuff if you want. So yeah, I would not be surprised if that was a big part of
Mm.
it. Because I would buy Midnight Mass on 4K in a heartbeat, just to
Oh
support it.
God!
It's like so good.
Instantly, God, that's yeah, it's
and uh,
phenomenal.
and like my wife and I actually rewatched Hill House. We mainlined Fall of the House of Usher in 2 days, and then um, after that we were like, should we watch Hill House for the fourth time? Yeah, let's watch Hill House for the fourth time.
Oh my God! Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing. How do you fit it in between your 57th Office rewatch as well?
I mean, we just put The Office on hold for a couple of days. It's fine. Yeah,
uh,
I
so
mean,
what? How many stars are you going with here then?
so I'm going to say that after my first rewatch, it has been a 4 out of 5 for me. There's every chance it'll go up when I watch it through a second time, or maybe not. I don't know yet. It's a little more uneven than something like Midnight Mass, and I would say that this is maybe on par with, um, Hill House. And Hill House is also a 5 out of 5 for me, to be fair. But it's definitely above like the Bly Manors of the world. um, it's kind of hard because like everything he's made, I at least like. Right? Like there's no, I don't think he has anything bad in his oeuvre, and I have not seen the Midnight Club. I don't know why. I should really should, but
I got to watch Oculus as well. I really want to get on that.
yeah, Oculus is really good. Oculus is really well put together. You know what he's the master of? Going back to the thing you talked about, where he being a really good editor. You know, he's also just the master of. He's the master of putting something that is not obvious into a frame and then making it obvious in the best way possible. Whether that means something in the foreground you're not paying attention to that then becomes important, or something in the background that you're not meant to see, but then moves in a way that is going to be like in the first episode. There's a great example of that in Fall of the House of Usher, where you're looking past Carl Lumbly and you can see there's some texture in the background, and then Bruce Greenwood says, "Oh, they're right behind you," and then like something in the background moves, and you're like, "Oh shit, that has been there the whole time." He is the best at that.
That's great.
So yeah, I think this is probably, in terms of his TV shows, this is probably like my number 3 thing of his, and it's 4 stars. But again, I think that this will probably go up once I've had a chance to rewatch it. Would be my guess. It's also, as opposed to like, it definitely has that sort of emotionality that things like Hill House, which makes me weep, and Midnight Mass, which makes me weep, and Dr. Sleep, which makes me weep at times. This has that emotionality, but it's much angrier, and I find that very, very interesting. It's very angry at the state of the world.
It really is,
and I find that super interesting. Yeah, totally. And like I say, I'm pretty confident that when I've had a chance to watch it a second time and pick up on all the things I've missed the first time through, I think it'll probably go up to a 5, personally.
Yeah, I think I'm probably. I was thinking about this a lot. I think when I finished, I was on 3 stars. And listening to us in our conversation today, and there is so much there that is spectacular. I think this is a 4-star for me. I don't think it's going to go up any more than that when I rewatch it. But the things that didn't quite land for me in this are massively outweighed by the spectacular pieces of acting and TV and writing that are present. I don't tend to watch long shows as well. It's not the kind of thing I enjoy consuming, so maybe that's why I felt it could have been shorter. I think there's some fat that could have been trimmed a little bit, but on the whole, it is really, really good. And is it 4 stars for me?
I mean, I would say that a more concise way to say what you're saying is that not everything works, but the stuff that works like fucking gangbusters. Like the stuff that's great absolutely rips.
So yeah, sure. What the fuck? 4 stars.
Yeah.
If just for Kate Seagal's blonde wig, which no, I'm not gonna say that on air.
Yeah.
But she like the spectacular elements are worth 4 stars in themselves, and the things that didn't work aren't really enough to drag it down. So yeah, 4 stars.
Yeah. Cool. Well, The Fall of the House of Usher is going to be released on Netflix. It's actually was the first 2 episodes were previewed at Fantastic Fest the weekend we're recording this. So those lucky people got to see the first 2 episodes in a cinema, which I would love to have been there for.
Yeah.
We have the advantage, I guess, that we've seen the whole thing versus just the first 2. But either way, it's going to be released on Netflix on October the 12th, and I think would be perfect Halloween viewing. So mark your calendars, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure.
And in the meantime, I will probably watch it again. So,
why not?
Yeah, I don't have children and I work at home, so it's
Vital.
it's a whole thing. Anyway, we're gonna wrap it up there. So one more time, that is No One Will Save You, 4 stars and 4 stars, and follow the House of Usher, 4 stars and 4 stars. Turns out we like horror stuff, which is excellent. If you have liked the show, if you've liked listening, then we would like to invite you to help us out by either subscribing to our Patreon to help us keep the lights on for as little as $2 Canadian a month, which also comes with bonus episodes ranging from like 15 to 30 minutes each, where we talk about things a little more freeform. You could also click through to the homepage for this episode on our website and use the links. There's links there powered by Just Watch, which will take you to where you can stream these titles. And if you use those links, we will get like a penny. So we would appreciate that. I know, right? And last but not least, you could also just like us on your podcasting platform of choice. Give us a 5-star review. Hit the subscribe button. Make sure it's downloading. Those are the things that help get us in front of more earballs every month. There's too many socials to list, so now we'll be linking to in the show notes. We'll just link to our respective home pages. Simon's is temporarypen.com. Mine is stretched.ca. You can find all of our recent work and our socials and all of that stuff at both of those places. We also record this here in Vancouver on the unceded and ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Tsleil-Waututh, and Squamish nations. Thank you so much for listening to the show, and one last time for joining us on this awesome Friday.
Thanks, bye.